And this is the question which I think presented over here. What would be your reaction to the thought, the proposition of the world just going up, reverting to nothingness? It's not nothing there. Going up in smoke, but without anyone suffering, just dissipating into nothingness. Would you consider that a tragedy, a shocking idea? Or would you say, if nobody suffered, then nothing happened? So since I was talking to Sholem, and he had a reaction to the question, so let's hear what he has to say.
So I would think that the honest answer from the state that I feel that I am in of late is that it's not a tragedy. But I don't think that's really honest.
No. I'm not interested in what it is. I'm interested in your perspective, what you feel.
So that's
This is what my whole talk yesterday was. What? Well, you weren't here, so you don't know.
What does it mean it goes up in smoke?
It just disappears.
Seems tragic.
Okay, but I'm saying that if you're perceiving the tragedy because there's going to be suffering, no suffering. That's projected as no suffering whatsoever. Not even for the cockroach. Nothing. No suffering. I'm not talking human suffering. No suffering, period.
But then there's no purpose. I mean, creation was for a purpose, right?
That's the question.
I'm asking, that's the question. As you perceive, I'm not thinking theoretically, I'm not asking you to look in the Chumash, I'm asking your personal, you're living in this world. The world is a reality, this is where you're functioning.
So I can answer the question from my feelings perspective or from my brain perspective. My feelings tell me it's not tragic right now. That's what my feelings tell me. My feelings I know are temporary and don't reflect my knowledge necessarily.
Okay, so what is your brain, what is your knowledge?
My knowledge dictates that there is more to be had in life, and this feeling of melancholy is temporary, and what life has to offer justifies even the temporary suffering. As a matter of fact, maybe it's can only be had through suffering, maybe. So in that case, it would be very tragic because we lose all the beauty that life has to offer.
Can I ask a question?
One minute. In other words, to summarize your answer.
What?
To summarize your answer. To summarize,
You
to
want me
put
to
your...
summarize it?
No, I'll paraphrase your answer, okay? That, yes, indeed, it will be tragic, because I will miss out on the next challenge. I love challenge.
No, I didn't say the pleasures, the beauty.
The beauty.
Challenge,
Okay.
the beauty of life is not limited to challenge, it is in human interaction, human experience, and the gifts from God for the life.
Wait a second. Okay. Yeah, but it has to do with human experience. The tragedy would be a miss on human experience.
I think so.
Okay. Yes, Gabriel.
Okay. So it's a very similar question. What if one continent disappeared, and you're still living in this world, and the whole continent disappears, and they all die? Would you view that as a tragedy?
That's the same question on a different scale.
Okay, but I mean, it's still tragic.
But you, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, what's behind it? What's behind?
In terms of, so you're suggesting, okay, this is limited to the human scope, but there's a godly scope. I can't say it's a tragedy for God, because God in His infinite being is no lacking. So obviously, then the world doesn't make up for any lack that He has. He doesn't have any lack.
Right.
So I can't say it's a tragedy for the ultimate purpose. I don't think that the ultimate purpose, I think, is really limited somewhat to the human experience.
Right. The human experience. Okay. Anybody else wants to react to this? What should I say? Kind of classic question. I'm saying. It puts your mind in perplexity. Like you say, what's that mean? My feeling, my mind, my this, my that. Certain things that you said kind of were relating to the essence of the question. But then you couldn't kind of hold on to it. And the bottom line is, yes, it's all human experience.
It's a gift from God.
Okay.
Human experience is a gift from God, which validates something that wouldn't have any other way. There is no other gift from God. Just to exist in itself.
A person who is a goisis, we spoke about it many times. Is a person who is totally incapable of contributing or of experiencing anything, but he's alive. His eyes are open. Is he alive or is he not alive?
He's alive.
What experience is he missing?
He may be missing a lot of experience, but he ultimately has more than he's missing
What does he have?
in his life. This is experience.
Okay, what's
But he has
experience?
nothing, no feeling. He has nothing.
Well, he's alive, but he's a goisis. He's weak. I'm not talking about somebody who's brain dead.
Okay, that's what.
I'm talking about somebody who is simply the very last moments of life.
Okay, even someone who's brain dead is also alive, no? Those experiences.
But he
I
reflects
don't know
on the
about
rest
that.
of his life.
On the-
He can
what?
have pleasure and reflection.
Sorry?
He can reflect on great experience. Someone who's
At those moments, okay, we don't know what it is.
Is his mind active?
Huh?
Is his mind active? This is 99% of life.
Okay, his mind is active, but he's totally incapable of experiencing anything.
He's capable of experiencing everything in the power
What
of
is he
his mind.
a
experiencing?
gentle breeze.
What is he experiencing?
Anything he wants to in his mind, any idea he can contemplate, he can reach the heights of the greatest intellectual accomplishments
Okay,
and push them.
all right, fine. Okay,
Maybe that
good,
guy
good.
in the chair, I don't know.
No,
if
one
that's
second.
wrong, but he looks like
No, okay, good. So let's then, focus in on what the difficulty, what the perplexity of this question is. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Okay, I'm not, by far, not dismissing anything you said. The point of this question is, and what makes it so perplexing, is that while, when we're looking at the world, we actually observe just what's called interactions, cause and effect, experiences, somehow we also perceive that there is a reality in the world that's totally beyond experience. There's a fundamental reality that's not dependent on experience, and is not the result of experience. This is what we are quoting from the Rambam all the time, that the principle of all wisdom, first, before you come to wisdom, like I mentioned yesterday in class, is to know that there's a first being, and this first being can only be defined as the truth, and from this truth emanate everything else that exists. This additional point, and this I'm quoting directly from Rambam. From this truth emanate everything that exists. This additional point in Rambam means the following: that there's an element of profound truth, of absolute truth in everything that exists. Where does it get that truth? Not of its own. It gets it from this source. So that even though everything in the world that we see is transitory, but in its transitory state, it actually represents something that is of an absolute truth, value. Like we said, always use this very simplification. Okay, you own a piece of property. You're going to own the piece of property till you are 120, but eventually it's not going to be yours. This ownership is an absolute truth. It's a godly truth. And halachically, if somebody takes the ownership of this property without your permission, throws you out of there, 200 years later, this is called gzeila, a property that's gozel. And if you come and you take a harova, you take a hishayna from there, an harova, or an esrog, or a lulav from that property, or for that matter, schach for the sukkah. It's a possible sukkah. Because lulav hagozel is possible. There's an element, this is our perception. But yes, ownership is not a conventional thing, it's a godly truth. Provided by the fact that the world comes from amitis himotze, from the truth of his presence. Therefore, let me make this point. The reaction, the inner reaction, perhaps we don't realize, inner reaction to this question, what if the world went up in smoke and destroyed and dissipated and disappeared? You know what our reaction is? You're talking about something that is impossible. I can't even apply myself to it. Because you're talking about reality. I'm talking about something transitory, temporary. Reality. It just doesn't exist, such a question. It's impossible. However we understand it, and whatever degree, the extent we understand it, it is one point is important to remember. This is the real world we are living in. This is the world we are trying to acclimate to. And this is the world we are trying to learn how to behave. Within which to how to behave. When we are learning loisignoiv, loisigzoil, It's everything. This is the world we are referring to. When we go Chas Shalom and we do one of these things, you're saying, oh, you're offending this person. I'm not offending this person. You're breaking the reality of the world. I mentioned it here. The Gemara says, two snowflakes. Remember that snowflake story? It's a Gemara. Two snowflakes coming out down from the sky. In flight, did you ever watch snowflakes flying all over the place? In flight, while they are still in flight, will never collide. Each will find their path. Each is a reality in itself. But once it lands on the ground, then it belongs to the world. As long as it's in flight, it's in Hashem's hand. There's no way it can collide with another flight. You follow what that is? There's an element of that reality in our own practical living. And this is what we are learning. Torah is about. This is what we are here for, to whatever degree. But ultimately, it is important that we realize what is that principal truth that is the basis of all Chokhmah. And what we're going to be learning now will actually challenge this particular point, as we're going to see in a minute. We get there today, next time. Okay? All right, so we are going to start. This is approximately, I then counted about like 12 lines from the top on page Ches. The line starts with the word Ne'elam. You have it? Gabriel? Bebeis ha'alomis, achas b'chadgas, v'abeis b'netzer v'hei. Cool. That's what we call Abba Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe. You got it, please? Strong? Okay. So, specifically where this comes in is that the Rebbe is explaining the principle, what the Gemara says, that there's a difference between Nevuas of all the Nevi'im and the Nevuas Moshe. All the Nevi'im, their Nevuah is described as Koi, thusly, like this. They say, Koi Amar Hashem. Hashem said thusly. The Rebbe says, what's the meaning of what Koi? This is what Hashem, not Zeh, no. Because he didn't have that element of Zeh, of the clear, direct statement, direct reality. Say, thusly. That's when the Nevi'im is Naba B'Koi. The Rebbe explains the whole principle of this, the so to speak, the shoyresh of this union that comes from Malchus and so forth, and there's a lot of concealment of the godly reality until it reaches them. It's already, so to speak, reduced to to kind of a similarity in a worldly context rather than a pure godly context, reality. Abba Moshe, here's this one after. Abba Moshe. But Moshe, nisna b'zeh. No, Moshe, he pronounced his nevuah with the term zeh. Since you weren't here, Gabriel, I want to just introduce the concept of zeh as I did to the rest of the class. I don't know if Sholem was there either. The term zeh is it's a very elusive, very significant term. We use zeh in a very, so to speak, in interchangeable way, and we have no problem with zeh. This is a couple, okay. just to illustrate on the first level, so we said that when you see a person that you're familiar with, but you see him from the back, you know, oh, this is such and such. Or you see him from the front, you say this is such and such. What is the difference between this level of identity, when you see him, you see his face, or you see him from the back? In both cases, you are certain that this is the person. But there's a fundamental difference. Right? When you see him from the back, you know for sure that this is him because you have indicators. The indicators are very clear. You have proofs that this is him. But you're not seeing him. You're seeing that which indicates that this is him. Whereas when you see him frontally, see his face, you don't say, I have proof that this is him because I see his face. I see him himself. This is a him. This is a reality. This is the concept of Zeh. Zeh is seeing the reality itself, not seeing the truth about the reality. When we discussed it, and I don't mind repeating it because I'm sure it will be beneficial for everyone, we pointed out the following. When Hashem created the world, He created the whole world. Everything that we see, I mean, all the variety that exists in the world is the Meibash's direct creation. Everything but the human being was created basically by what we call species. By species. There should be a tree that produces fruit. Fruit. What kind of fruit? Hundreds of different varieties of fruit. Thousands of different varieties of fruit. They're all of the species of fruit. The creation essentially is the species. And then it varied, as the Tanya explains, with the various combinations of words, of letters. This will just be finished in Ashan Yechud Amuna. And there are all kinds of different subsets. Every fruit tree is a subset of the absolute concept of a fruit. Every fruit is not, this is the fruit. No, this is a symbol of a fruit. Yeah, it's a fruit, this is a fruit, this is a fruit. Everything is a fruit, is a subset of the real thing. The human being was created differently. The human being was created as an individual, directly. God's direct building his body and putting in a neshama into him. That's the human being. The human being, the Gemara says, nefesh achas, obviously when you say human being, you mean nayid, because a goy doesn't, I'm not dismissing it, a goy does not have that quality. He still has seichel anushi, seichel, but it doesn't compare, that's not, this we're talking about the godly element in the person, which is by Yid. The Gemara says, one nefesh achas mi Yisrael is oilam mole. Nefesh achas is a whole world. There is no, so to speak, a subset, a species, and he's a subset. He's an example of it. No, that's the real thing. A human being is the real thing. Every human being is the real thing, not a subset, not an illustration. He's a real thing. The human being represents the concept of Zeh, of a reality, of the godly reality in the world. This is what we pointed out many times, that the whole world, with all its richness and all its variety, before Adam Rishon came on the scene, was totally meaningless. conceive a world without a human being, no matter how developed and rich it is meaningless. One human being into the world, and that brings reality to the world. Makes a difference. 1 or a billion makes a difference. Every one is a billion, is a reality. Every one is a reality in his own right, and a full reality, full godly reality. This is called Zeh. Moshe, the Gemara says, Moshe nisnaba b'zeh. In contrast to all the Nevi'im who were only nisnaba b'koi. So we discussed this a great length, the whole thing. Koi means such, thusly, such and such, similar. But he didn't have the full view of this godly presentation, godly revelation. Whereas Moshe, he had this Zeh. By Matan Torah, all of us observed the Meibish's presence in the world, not at the level of Koi, meaning, where else does the world come from? It must have been created. That's not the real thing. The real thing is you see it being created. That's that. That's right. Kriyas Yamsuf was a very great revelation. The Gemara says, Rosa Shivcha Hayam Asher Leron Nevi, but it's still not the real thing. Koi. By Matan Torah was the real thing. They actually saw Moshe, they were able to speak to Moshe. This was the real thing. This is why Torah was imprinted profoundly in our being. This was the real thing. This was the Zeh. The Zeh in the birth of the Jewish people, even though they went through all kinds of miracles in Mitzrayim and so forth. Where was the actual declaration that the Jewish people are Hashem's people forever and ever? Matan Torah. Like Kriyas Yamsuf also, he came through and Parah was drowned. That was all signs, proofs. The real thing is by Matan Torah. This is what they say. Moshe is not Zeh.
But even Moshe's Nevuah, even though it was the highest level of Nevuah, he didn't see Hashem in his fullness. He also saw like
the Nevuah. He didn't see it maybe Hashem, but he saw Hashem's words coming to him. Hashem's words came to him.
It wasn't
like in a dream. It was a clear statement. This is what the difference between Torah and everything else. This is the godly reality. Hainu. Okay, now the Rebbe explains it more, so to speak, in Hasidic terms, or Lashon HaKabbalah. Nisnaba b'zeh hainu gilui b'china zoh. This is the gilui of the aspect of zoh, in contrast to what Nevi'im, all the Nevi'im, they got their Nevuah from the Madrega of Malchus. Moshe nisnaba b'zeh, which is the gilui of zoh directly. What is zoh? Bechinas etzem hadover, which is with the etzem hadover, the very reality itself, k'mei shehu, as it is unto itself, bilti bo b'hislapshut dmus, without being represented in a dmus, in a similarity, so to speak, in something that appears as such, but not the real thing itself.
Vision, maybe?
The mus means it's appearance. It appears like that, but it's not the real thing. But Shoyresh Nevuah, we'll go through a little bit. There's terminology which we already explained. I don't think we want to go back again. I'll just mention certain points about it. V'shoyresh nevuah, and the source, the root of his nevuah, hoyso mibchinas yisoid Abba. What from that bechina, what's called yisoid Abba. Abba means shoyresh. Abba means chokhmah. And I think I mentioned yesterday, briefly, the insight of Chokhmah, right? Remember that? Yisoid Abba, Shoyresh U'Moker HaMoichin Dezo, which is the source of the Moichin of Zoh. The whole union of Moichin, okay, we already discussed in the previous page. I want to bring it, I have to mention it again, because they were, some of us weren't present here at the time, and some of them, nevertheless, this is something which needs to be refreshed because it's a very, very elusive and very deep union. What is so special about Moichin? Moichin means brain, in contrast to Lev, to heart. Interesting that Chassidus refers to Moichin rather than Seichel. The whole thing in Moichin is that Moichin is a Seichel. What is the significance of using the word Moichin?
It's anatomy and physiology, right?
Huh?
It's like what you mean saying like it's the brain instead of the thoughts?
The brain instead of the Seichel.
Yeah.
Brain
Yeah.
versus the mind.
Yeah.
The mind, the Seichel.
The anatomy and physiology.
I just thought of it now in order to explain the point that we're coming here. The difference between the nature of the brain and the nature of the heart. The brain and the heart both carry the very life element of the human being. A boy came into the Rebbe, a bar mitzvah boy. And the Rebbe talked to him about, I prepared for a mitzvah, you learn Shulchan Aruch, yeah. The Rebbe asked him, what if somebody does not have on the arm? What does he do with tefillin? Then he puts on just the tefillin shorosh. Doesn't have an arm to put on tefillin, he puts on tefillin shorosh. Alone. It's also a mitzvah because each mitzvah is independent of the other. So the Rebbe says, what if he doesn't have a head? So the kid was kind of taken aback. Anyway, I think the Rebbe, the question is very obvious. What's obvious? The head, this is the person. If there's no person, there's no tefillin. So, and the heart likewise. The heart is the center of the physical life of the person. What's the difference? The heart basically we say houses the midos, the emotions, the emotive part. The moichin of heart houses the intellectual part. In terms of the nature, this is the critical thing of moyach versus lev. Sorry? No, that's shlita. That's a different thing. The difference in nature is like this: the heart gets touched, gets affected, gets excited, gets heated up. It gets personally involved. The moyach, on the other hand, stays cool. What is the significance of coolness? Not that it's not involved in things don't mean anything to it. The moyach looks at a different element than the heart. The heart looks at the element of what does it mean to me? How do I experience it? How does it touch me? The moyach sees the moyach sees what's the reality. The moyach looks for reality.
Not practicality?
No, not practicality. Practicality is also something that has to do with me. Moyach looks what's the reality. The practicality element is the chitzonius hamoyach. This is not moyach. This is what the the business people will tell you, come on, let's be practical. Real. That's what they call real. And that's not moichin. Is what's the reality of life? What's life about? That's moichin. That's reality.
Why is that moichin as opposed to seichel?
Oh, because seichel is an involvement. In seichel, you have reasoning. So essentially there is. I'm sorry.
Your heart takes part.
A little bit, but the main thing is that in seichel there are things that are compelling you to see it one way or another. Whereas the element of moichin per se says, no, I see it because it's true. This is the, so to speak, this is the reference to the word moich. I'm not involved, it doesn't touch me, stay cool, and yet that's the truth, that's the reality. This is the influence of the word moich. We spoke about yesterday, I think, right? That we're still coming to it over here in a very, very profound way. Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah was when he saw it Abba, which is shoyresh u'moker ha-moichin d'zoh. Moichin, as we discussed in the previous page, moichin of Zoh, moichin of Malchus. Moichin in each madrege. When we're talking about Zoh, Malchus, everywhere the union of moichin alludes to the element of the primary truth, of the reality, not my personal inclination, how it touches me. That's a moichin. In Midas, there is also an element of moichin, because ultimately moichin give rise and give justification, so to speak, give room for the Midas. But once it comes into Midas, it becomes already personal. But this is the difference between a human being and an animal. An animal is pure Midas. Doesn't consider, is it true what I'm getting excited about? A human being gets excited, but he also needs a sense of, but it's also true, it's also right, it's also good. It's not just, I'm getting excited about it. There's an element of moichin, in that's what defines human midas. Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah was rooted in the moichin, not moichin in the original moichin in Chochmah itself, but Chochmah as it was enslaved in Zoh. This is the moichin the Zoh, which means that this is where there's this element of the reality itself, emes. The Gemara says that you mentioned that Moshe didn't see Hashem himself. He asked for it, and he didn't see. But then he says, "Vayaver Hashem al pona vayikro." Hashem, Hashem allowed him to see what no one else was ever permitted to see. And then Moshe Rabbeinu fell on his face, as it says, Vayipa. So it says, and the Gemara says, Maro. What did he see? Emes. Emes. It says that when Koirach, when the whole Dosan Avirim, the Bnei Koirach, when they were swallowed down into the earth, and there was a tremendous noise. Nosu L'Koilam, all the Eden ran away from. They were all screaming. Why were they screaming? Meisha Emes v'Teirosei Emes. Moshe Emes v'Teirosei Emes. The meaning of Moshe is not smart, good, kind. Moshe is the meaning of Emes. He really brought down, so to speak, God into the world and presented in Torah. This is why the Torah, this is Hashem's word. You can take every word in the Torah and conjugate it and explain it 100 different ways, and it's all the Mebish's words. Because the Torah, as you know, in the Torah there are 300,000, 350,000 letters. The whole big deal. Right? They give the Sefer, you can write the whole Torah in 1 month, 2 months. And this Torah, there's an infinity. Because it is not, what you say is just a chitzonius organization. What it contains is an infinity. All kinds of different ways of reading it, putting together letters together and so forth. That like a Chover Goin. You heard about like a Chover Goin? Yeah. He was one of the, unusual Goinim, so to speak, in
They said he would review all the time. They said he would review. He said, someone said like he didn't necessarily have such.
Yeah, his memory was phenomenal, but his insight was also phenomenal. So Chover Goin said that the whole Torah, from the base of Bereshis till the Lamed of Eloheinu Kol Yisrael, is one long word. Just like in a word. If you transposition one letter in a word, what happens?
Different word.
Different word. You transposition one letter in the Torah. It's totally different Torah. It's one long word. It's the only way to really learn it. That's what he said.
Well, it's not going there are some letters which you don't read it that way.
That's the Kabbalah Azeh. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu Hatil said. This, you write like this, and Ksiv and Kri and Ksiv, this is Seirat HaTorah. Okay. Okay, let's just go in the next section, but the real thing we will learn in next Monday. For this reason, it says by Moshe, "V'atera oisa ki toiv hu." That when Moshe was born, his mother Yechevet, you all know the story. Moshe was born in the circumstances where there was the decree from Pare that a boy has to be drowned, thrown into the Nile.
And then Miriam fought with Amram. I'm not fought, but like.
Yeah. So when he was born, so Yechevet Toivu, he was a special child. Had something very special quality about him, and so she hid him. 3 months, she delayed the next step. It's inevitable. It was inevitable for her to do what she to put him in the water. But she delayed it for 3 months. She was able to delay it for 3 months because he was born early and so forth. So it says, she saw him that he was good. What is the implication of the word kitoivu? Hainu, that is, bechinas Re'iya de Chochma. This seeing, the expression of seeing, there is seeing and understanding. In Bina we say Havana. Chochma is called Re'iya. Re'iya de Chochma. We'll discuss it in Mitzvah Monday in greater length, but just our first installment. Just like in sight, when you see a panorama, you grasp the entire vision at a glance. Not because you understand what you're seeing, not because it makes sense. Why is this? What is this all about? Because it's there. You see the reality, it's truth, and therefore you see it. Chochmah is likewise. Chochmah, the element of Chochmah in that person, like we said yesterday, the epitome of wisdom is seeing what the neshama sees. That you see the reality. And that comes in, this is the level of Chochmah. Chochmah is called Re'iyah, sight, even though it's part of the structure of Seichel, and Seichel means understanding. But this is the, so to speak, the upper edge of Seichel. Seichel as it emanates from that which is higher than Seichel. So therefore you see it, but you don't have full comprehension of what you see. The sighting of it is sufficient to allow the Bina to go and focus in and try to understand, what did I see? Whereas at a higher level, there's no way you can't even penetrate it. In Rotzen and Noina, you can't even penetrate it. You can't even begin to contemplate it. In Chochmah, it comes already in a manner that you've seen it, so you can contemplate it. But at the level of Chochmah, you have not fully comprehended what you saw. So then, what Vatera is, here's a Re'iyah de Chochmah, in other words, pointing out that Moshe Rabbeinu represented Chochmah. And now we will interrupt until, not a long interruption, till Monday.
That's why I guess eyesight is the most we're learning yesterday. Eyesight's like the most important. The person who's blind is
Absolutely. I think I spoke about it yesterday.
Yeah,
That's right. Eyesight changes the whole person.